Hello, listeners. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome again to the Leading with Integrity podcast. As you may have noticed, this is our 50th episode of the podcast. I'm so pleased that we've made it to this milestone and that so many of you have been enjoying what we're doing and getting some value from all of these conversations that I love to have about leadership. So to mark this milestone and to say thank you to all of you for all of your listens, for the lovely reviews that many of you have left, and for the occasional kind email that I've received about the podcast as well. We've got a few things lined up. So over the next month, I'll be doing a bonus episode each week for the next 4 weeks. We're going to be trying a new format with that as well. So keen to get some feedback from you all. If you would like to jump the queue and get all 4 of those straight away, you can. I'm also, for a very limited time only, opening free sign-ups for the Integrity Leaders membership. So you can get free access for life. Again, limited time, limited numbers. So act quickly if you're interested in that. And finally, there's also going to be a very cool free gift, which I'm not going to tell you anything about. I'm going to maintain the air of mystery there. So to get access to all of these things and find out what that mystery gift is, visit the website. The address is in the episode description. It's a one-off website. It's the only link I'm going to put in the description this week. So head over there, sign up to whatever you want to sign up for, download the free thing if you like, or, well, I can't tell you anything else about it because it'll give away the surprise, won't it? And I hope you all get loads more value from all of those things. As I say, it's my way of saying thank you for tuning in as often as you do. You are appreciated, and enjoy the 50th episode. Today, I'm going to be talking about the power of resilience, perseverance, gratitude, and the importance of mindset when it comes to leadership and owning or running a business. And to help us really get into that subject, I'm joined by Jeffrey Morgan. Jeff, who's had a unique and inspiring journey from running away from home at the age of 12, later becoming a bank robber, and then turning his life around into what he does today, helping people with their mindset as a life coach, running workshops all over the world on leadership, and teaching people about the lessons he's learned along the way. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Jeff is an amazing guy, really enjoy talking to him, so I hope you all get the same out of it that I have.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
I'm joined today by Jeff Morgan from down under, from Australia, from the land of sun and kangaroos. Thank you for being here, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Hand over the reins to you, really, to start with, to tell the listeners a bit about yourself, your background, and how you've ended up doing what you do today.
Yes, I'm what we call mental health first aider here. I'm not too sure what they sort of deem that across where you are in the UK, but in general, helping people with mental health and wellbeing issues. And then you've got the leadership side of things. We've gone down a path where we do a lot around leadership, mental health, high performance habits and rituals, and a lot around the human mindset. To give people context of the background, spent 18 years in custody. As a kid, I grew up on one of Australia's most notorious infamous streets for where I became a byproduct of the environment that I was in. And that just put me into a position where those habits and rituals I had acquired, well, as much as I operated at a really high level, were very destructive to myself and those around me. So went through that little lifestyle for a good 25 years, spent 18 years, as I said, of those in custody. By the end of it, I was a bank robber, convicted of 2 bank robberies, serving time pretty much in all maximum security jails across New South Wales and Melbourne, and basically turned my life around 13 years ago. It'll be 20 years to the date, June the 13th this year, since my last arrest. And we work with everybody from the Department of Defence through to corporates, athletes, schools, organizations, communities, hospitals, universities, as I said, tapping into leadership, mental health, mindset, and high performance habits and rituals. And it's just something been a journey. And I've been able to take all the lessons of that journey and apply them into people's lives. How did I rewire my own mindset? What were the steps that I'd taken in that? And we developed a program that we deliver globally. And as I said, for a young kid that had run away and was on the streets at 12 years of age, not knowing where the next bit of food came from, going into survival mode, going into, by the end of it being, a bank robber. At that point in time, it's pretty insane to think 13 years ago, since I walked out of there, I have now acquired a bachelor's degree and work with the people that we do. So that's a bit about my story and how we sort of got to where I am today.
Yeah, quite a contrasting life then.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally different.
Yeah. So this might be a really obvious question, and apologies if it is. So 13 years ago, what was the catalyst that made you change?
I think sometimes, someone has an epiphany around one thing. For me, I think it was the sum of a lot of things. I'd done a lot of education. I was in and out of custody over those years. And I think just as you educate yourself, you start to mature, obviously. You're starting to find a sort of why to life. What would I like to do? But I had a real alliance to a group of friends that we hung around. This same crew were the crew that got arrested for both bank robberies I was involved in. And at that point in time, my son had come out to visit me during a 5-year sentence for bank robbery and asked me to come home and kick a football with him at one point in time and said, why can't you come with me? You don't love me. And I think, hearing things like that with the education, there was these little snippets. And the last time I was arrested, it was in Melbourne. We committed a bank robbery down there. I'm going to trial. We had this little integrity type conversation about, let's be loyal to one another. If someone can get off, we'll come and say whatever it took to get them off. I was that person, went back to the jail, asked them to come and support me. They sort of basically said, look, I'm going to ask my solicitor. Coming from the brotherhood of integrity, my mindset was, well, look, don't worry about it. If you have to ask your solicitor, I thought we were and had one another's backs as much as possible. And so it was all these little components. During that trial, I get put into segregation because they used the mobile phone that I had. They'd found that phone whilst I was at trial, but it was in my cell because they'd taken it out of where we'd hidden it. Put me into segregation. The sequence of events really led to, as I said, the sum of all things. I was sitting in segregation for a good 3 months. And when I say segregation, you've basically got nothing in your cell but a pen and a paper and the toilet, the shower and your bed. That's it. No TV, no nothing. And I think at that point in time, I started to really think age-wise. I was thinking if I get X amount of years, I'm going to get out at a sort of age I can sort of possibly do something. I was thinking 5 to 10 years, which would have got me out at about 41. But I was lucky enough to get 7 years and got out obviously at 36, which, in my eyes gave me an opportunity. If I went back and done it again, I got 5 years for the first bank robbery, 7 for the second one. The context of this conversation, the crew kept going after we come home. They're currently serving 19 years with 14 on the bottom. So, I was arrested, they're 5 years into that sentence with 9 years to go. That, to me, I've stayed home for 13 years, changed my life around. And I want to give hope to everybody. That's what we do. And I understand mental health is huge for anybody. And as much as I learned one thing over time, the integrity to myself. And that means that I value myself, but I also try and help somebody to a point, and then you've got to help yourself. And I think, I have one of those old co-accused still ring me up and say, I wish I had your strength. So, I'm proud of being able to turn that around. And as I said, I come out of segregation. So I've had all these thoughts. There's a professor standing there from a university in New South Wales, to give context to the UK viewers or anyone across the world. for that matter, you're not able to access computers studies or like in your cell in New South Wales. It's very full on as a system. Whereas in Melbourne, I come out, this bloke says, you look like a smart little character. And I was like, oh, I'll do my best. And he says, would you like to do a university degree? And I was like, where am I going to do that? And because I'd come from the New South Wales system, we went down there to rob a bank. So people know and have context. It's 8 hours away from that destination, Sydney to Melbourne. And he says, no, you can actually do one here. And I said, well, what's available? And the rest was history. And I think those whole sequence of events, age was starting to catch up on me. I was just getting sick of my own bullshit, to be straight out and honest. And I just got to a point in time where I said, no, look, the time is now. And I stepped across that line, and it saved me another 14 years of my life. And that would have, I served 18, it would have been 32 years of my whole life spent in prison, or juvenile justice. And to be able to turn that around, what did that look like? I said, you've got something powerful up here to be able to do that. Not only tell yourself you're going to do it, but be able to turn around and say, how can you stick to that? How can you be consistent? How have you been consistent? Where does the discipline and accountability come from? And that's a great tool that you could pass on to any human being to get the most out of their life around the perception of what they want out of life, and the rest was history. So, bit of a solid journey.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine how difficult it must be to, literally break the habit of a lifetime like that.
Imagine, and for yourself, any of the listeners, Dave, imagine just whatever you're set as right now. It could be a religion, it could be a work, a particular field of work that you've been in for a long extended period of time, and someone comes in and says, let's change that. You'll be like, oh, I'm comfortable in this workspace because you've built so much comfort, the habits behind it, you know how to operate there. Even though I didn't pause to think how destructive it was, not only just to other people, but to me as well, that everyone involved in it. And then when you pause, you're like, wow, what have you dished out to other people? And I think that's what it's saying, that sum of all things. I've matured enough to think, what if that was my grandmother? What if that was my mother? Is there a better way? How do people survive a different way? As a 12-year-old kid that runs away and jumps out of the first floor story because his father's abusive, physically abusive, and I'm talking really solid buildings, you get to a point where that takes, you just imagine a 12-year-old kid on the streets. You look at your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, and look at anyone that's 12 years of age and think to yourself, that's what I was doing. So by 12 to 16, I'd become ingrained in the art of survival and, doing whatever it took to get food, a roof over my head, some money in my pocket to sort of feel like I could do what I needed to do when I needed to do it. And I think that just, and then that just, because you're on the streets, you're learning these different sort of upskilling yourself just in a different sort of format. And then, that leads to one thing, the senses become longer and longer. You try and get smarter and smarter. And each time you go in, you're acquiring these bits of knowledge from people of knowledge, but just obviously destructive knowledge in that sense.
You talk about upskilling and obviously it's survival driven, isn't it? But clearly there were some skills, some mindsets in there that have stayed useful. Absolutely. Even in your new career. So how do you pick what to keep and what to throw away?
It's something. Yeah, well, a great question. But it's what I did with my program. Literally, I packed my brain. All these questions got dumped out, and then I put it in a way where I thought about the human being answering that and how the benefit and value of that answer would help them go upskill their own life as such. And I looked at things. What did it serve me? Was it constructive, destructive? Was it good, bad, positive, negative? Did it help me grow, or did it sort of take me into a position of destruction, more destruction? And these little principles, I then just take that and say, that's not relevant to this conversation. And it's not going to help that individual grow, prosper, learn, grow, prosper from the experience. So you have an experience of life. we learn from that experience, we grow from that experience, we prosper for the rest of our life, because it means usually if we've taken the lessons from that, we're not going to step back into that. Unfortunately, sometimes the habits and rituals of a human being are so entrenched or ingrained that, as you know, to rewire our mindset, we're going to have to repeat that effort solidly until these neural pathways connect, and obviously allow that inner junction to occur at a regular basis, because we've built strength through that area from repetitive action. And I always say that around the human muscle, the more we lift weights, the stronger that weight the muscle becomes. And in time, the same principle applied to these habits, these rituals. And I look at them, is this strengthening me, or is this actually weakening me? And as I said, go through that whole process, constructive, destructive, good, bad. And it really made me become very intentional and very directional. And that meant that I wasn't going to waste time. I got a little principle. A is when you're born, B is when you die. What do you want in between that? Go out and design that, and then live that every single day, and you'll find that your life will be beautiful. And that's where I got to this point where I'd chuck out what I didn't want, keep what I did want. And I realized I'd actually designed the life that I wanted from that point in time. And that's what we basically help people do. Design your life, keep you accountable and responsible to the words that come out of your mouth, and the discipline behind, the actions that I used to take in that scenario. They had to be at the highest quality because it could cost you your life. And I suppose that just transferred into using the same mentality and the depth of that conversation in human lives, because in the end, some people are alive, but they're already dead. And, they're a prisoner of their own mind based on around how they perceive life. And we help people that are traumatized. We help athletes get more out of themselves. We help corporates be able to focus and create work-life balance, all these components. And with, 5,000 resources in the app, online version, 2 workshops a week, we've been able to be very directional and intentional around helping people get the most out of themselves in any environment.
Most people, they're going to have a pretty difficult time with potentially just one life-changing, challenging event. And I know from some of our earlier conversation and from reading into your background a bit, you've been through quite a few life-changing events. I'd say some pretty big ones. How do you cope with so many of them and in such a short space of time as well?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. As I literally run that same program I spoke about on myself, because here's the thing, life's short. And we get this opportunity. It is an opportunity when we step on this planet. I don't know the stats. You might know them probably actually. It's still like trillions to something to get onto this planet. And then we get out here, and obviously I consumed a lot of that in custody. And I had made a promise to myself to make the most out of life for the rest of my life, to be the best of my life. And what that means is I have to be intentional. I'd love to have those 18 years back and use those towards what I love doing now. I know that it would be a totally different way, but at the same time, it built the character and the person I became. So I can't be complaining and ungrateful for what I've got now. I'm still alive, and that's an opportunity. But going back to it, brother and sister commit suicide. Both parents died whilst I was in custody from cancer. I did see them. I'd seen my mum endure 7 years of leukemia, but obviously locked up when she did finally go. Same thing with my father. He went very quickly. Tumor, 7 weeks later, he was gone. Then I had another brother from a preventable health issue, tears out. He was in hospital, tears out the actual stuff they've got in there, helping him to sort of replenish himself, and goes home, bleeds to death from an abscess. So, the Aboriginal community in Australia has been through huge trauma, the stolen generation here, the conversations. I come through that area where there was a lot of trauma, a lot of stress. There was a lot of racism. You're on that side of the bus, you're on that side of the bus or pool or pub or whatever it may have been. So it was a dark sort of upbringing. I was bounced between parents. Both parents were fighting quite often. I remember at 8 or 10, which you don't really remember much, but I remember looking up at both my parents and them asking me who did I want to live with. And, as a young kid, I was like, I'll live with you both. And they're like, no, you got to choose one. I'm like, to think that I was even put in that position as a kid, just insane. But shows why I was built the way that I was built, why I ran away. Father's physical abuse, and then being bounced between babysitters during that period, and then life on the streets. It was, some of you're fighting for your life really at some points in time. And then we went through this whole transition period where, you are on the streets, there was crimes committed that, it was insane. As you said, trauma, stress. You get to a point, I think my brother's suicide made me realize that life's very short. And I probably, going back to that sum of all efforts again, what do you really want out of life? And I think I paused as much as I was in a 2016, I'd been home 6 years. I'd become a PT nutritionist working in a gym, and I was on fire, killing it, doing really well, mentoring other PTs, starting to do these talks, schools, fitness industry. And I think at that point in time, I just went, it really made me stop and pause again, just like I was in Segro again, and say, what do you want out of life? Like, what do you turn your life around now, but do you want to be in a gym every single day for the rest of your life? And it sort of made me realize, hey, actually, probably not. And as much as I loved helping people, and I'd change and save so many lives on a health and well-being level, I wanted to get out. I've been in custody for so long. I didn't want to be in one space, and I still wanted to do, as you said, something authentically attached to myself, something I love doing. And then went into the mental health and wellbeing space, realized, hey, there's a lot of leadership skills behind this, high performance habits and rituals. Let's turn that into something. And as one day we could be in one suburb here, local Sydney, next day we're in interstate. So for those over there, you could be in London one day, in Newcastle the next, as an example, and then over in Liverpool the following. So then I could be in Malaysia, and then back into, so we just finished a 5 sort of country tour: Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Malaysia, Singapore, and New Zealand for leadership workshops. So it just depends on the day and the time. And to me, I'm still doing what I love, but I've been able to get out and about, and to be able to get paid for what you love doing, and then change and save lives and see the world. I sort of probably, to me, that was very intentional, and that's something I'd pass on to everybody. What are you good at? And really getting into a space, make sure you enjoy life, that work-life balance for yourself that I see so many corporates get caught up in. And they're literally stuck in that office for a long period of time, not seeing their kids and not seeing the world. Make sure to get out and live life, because, you want to make sure you make the most of the life that you got whilst you're here. Whether you believe you come back or not, that's your choice. But in the end, you're on this planet. Let's make the most out of it for yourself based around what you like doing.
I agree with you. I think that's the most important thing. So on this podcast, we talk about quite a lot of leadership subjects, things like resilience and self-reflection, self-awareness, empathy, the importance of all of these things. But it's usually quite abstract.
Yep.
And I think that's what's so powerful about your story and your journey is we can see through that, through the way you tell it as well, how important all of those things actually can be, and how life-changing they can be, what a difference they can make, not just for leadership, but for just life. So, thank you. Thank you for sharing that story.
That's where I know, because we deal with people. And even, I still got a lot of people that will reach out and obviously know my background and now the podcasts are out and people from different states, different countries. And I say to them, you still got, as human beings, we've got qualities. So did I work hard, or was I persevering when I was doing these bank robberies to go and look at what I needed to do or something? It was a commitment to it. You're committing to something that could cost you your life, which means if you have that same principle around a business that you would start and you say, I'll give my life to it and go all in, just rephrase the words or reframe the words, then you're going to get a great outcome out of that. And that's why Even in the business world, same thing. And I'll give a great example of it. People will perceive something, what mistake they've made. Or for me, I'm all about removing words out of because we've been fed something that we then take on and learn, right? And if we can remove particular words, so I've never made a mistake or failed. That's the only time I talk about those two words on podcasts these days. And what I say instead is more about the lessons I've learned to grow and prosper in life. And when I do that and I feed my brain will only hear what I tell it. All of a sudden I can start to head towards what I've always wanted to be. And I can start to see it through the words that I speak, the actions that I take, the beliefs that I create. And because your brain is just a sponge that will take a program on based around what you think, feel, and act. And the more we do this and the more we step into this on a regular basis, the more we believe and become it. And as I said, we didn't have that word in the dictionary, you wouldn't know what it means. So I shift words to the side and say, hey, I'll just navigate those to that side. And here's what I'm going to focus on. And as you know, your reticular activating system, I don't know if you play Spotto in England, but we play this game here in Australia. It's called Spotto. And basically, when you're a young kid, you're spotting the yellow car, right? Yeah. And I don't know if you play some sort of game over there of that nature.
We play that.
Yeah.
But we call it something different. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So exactly right? So you call it, and this is the whole reframing conversation, like two different countries, same game, different name, right? And then you say, oh, well, you're wrong, David. All it comes down to is your own perception, right, of who's right or wrong. But in the end, if it's not positive, if it's not constructive, it's not good, those little principles I spoke about before, then I'll just push it to the side. And once that, for people that get an understanding around this conversation, that reticular activating system, if you play Spotto, and I don't know what it's called there, but in general, if it's a yellow car, all of a sudden yellow cars are everywhere. Oh, Spotto, and you get a point for each of these cars. That's how the brain focuses when you focus on one particular thing, or you're actually looking for one particular thing. And if you put positivity in front of yourself, you put success, you become very intentional around your A to B. You write that out. I want to see the pyramids in Egypt. I want to get married with 2 kids. Someone might want millions of dollars in their account. You'll find that you're more likely to step towards that direction because you've taken that subconscious thought and turned it into a conscious action. And if your habits and rituals are starting to create around that, the more layers that you add to it, the easier that training session. And when I say build strength around muscles, and if the muscle being used, or technically for yourself, if the brain is being used more often than not, you create the strength of belief. And that's something that we teach, basically everyone we come in contact with. And if someone comes to me with an excuse after what I've been through, then there's not much they can tell me that they've sort of been through that I haven't been through. And I totally understand, but it's a real shift in your mentality to create a better reality. And the way the perception of everything is how you see everything as well. Because, as I said, if you see something and say, the first thing most people will do around a problem is what? Call someone up. Hey, Mary, so-and-so has done X, Y, and Z to me. Oh, I can't believe it. And they had this conversation. You build a bit of a neurological response to that. And then now I call my mother. I call yourself, Dave. I call, going to work and talk about it. And now I've got this strong neurological response. And if that was a traumatic experience to somebody, then all of a sudden you'll be in a position where that becomes a normal part of your daily routine. And what you might do as you travel to work is turn on some love song. That love song sparks you off. You get upset. You then deal with it a little bit. And we go in this vicious cycle continuously. Even though we know it's a vicious cycle, we're able to deal with it. And we know that by putting on this other music or painting or meeting someone and having coffee, whatever it is that you use it as your coping strategies, you step into that space and that just becomes a normal you. And that was me as a young kid, thinking crime was totally normal. Just kept going on this hamster wheel. And then until something puts an absolute stop or roadblock in that, jail, boys' homes, for me, then, the suicides in my family, they give you points of time or reference that put that roadblock straight through the middle path of the normal direction of your life, and they give you an opportunity to pause and think about a different direction. And that's, something that a lot of us don't do in what I call drive-through society now, because we're so, so much stimulation. Got to get this done quickly. Have you done that yet? When was the last time you traveled? And people are like, I'll travel next year and I don't have time. That's something that's becoming more often than not said. Just don't have the time for it. I just don't have the time. We break down people's weekly planners diaries and we say, all right, open it up, and we have a look at it, and people say, by the time they finish with us, they've got hours on hours per day that they can actually get some stuff done around what they'd like to do with their life. And it's a more fulfilled and content one. So, pretty good journey, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. What was it that you struggled with most in changing your life?
My biggest struggle, I'd say, in life was probably the money that I made. I made a lot of money, and I was very well known in the criminal world in Australia, or Sydney, New South Wales, more so Australia. And I think coming out of that, but the way I changed that, same thing, I broke it down. I deconstruct everything. That's the best way. I say to people, really deconstruct it and ask the questions around each of the bits that are put into a part. So if you're building a building, why are we putting this here? Oh, that strengthens the building. Why are we putting this here? Suspension or whatever it is. I'm not a builder. I've got no idea, but as the example, these little components, right? And when I broke it down, you make $60 a week in jail here. And, in general, for me, $60 a week, the way I ended up breaking it down was if I could have $60 in my pocket, and I was at Bondi Beach, the sun's going down. Sun doesn't go down over Bondi Beach, goes out the other side, but at some beautiful beach, sun going down, $60 in my pocket. I'm free to do what I want when I want. I've got some warm clothes on myself. I've got a home to go home to. And some form of transport, even if it was public transport, then I'm in a good spot. And that's how I shifted my mentality. That attitude, my attitude determined my altitude at that point in time in my life. And that was something very powerful, because I was in a spot where, I was able to make the comparison. Do you want to have $60 in jail for serving X amount of years, or would you like to be free with the $60 in your pocket? And I think that was the hardest thing, because when I did come home in 2010, I got back with the old crew, even though I didn't want to. I said, oh, look, I got a great job, and I was doing well at that point in time. About a year in, I'd been working for a year straight, no trouble, no catching up with anybody. They come to my work, we go out, they're under surveillance, we get arrested, and it's sort of minor charges. I shouldn't say that, somewhat serious. And in general, if I hadn't been doing what I do, I dragged that court case out for 3 years, and that allowed me to do good for a good solid 4 years. So that was my only offence. We go back to court, the judge says, mate, you've turned your life around. And if it wasn't for Jeff, you'd all be going back to jail. So, I think at that point in time, I'd realised I could make some really good money. And the money I was making as a PT was, I didn't realise how much I was making. I was thinking, I'll make more and more and more. And like, that was just my mentality from the old school mentality. And what I ended up found, they'd put in the national paper what they were making out of the primary. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm not on bad money then. And I just started to realise, that's the way of life. It's just, and do you want more? Well, become a bit more diverse in what you do. What about some online stuff? And I started to build the online app. What about subscription? And then I started to do these talks and retreats, and everything just sort of went out from then. The way I saw it was more, I want to leave an imprint. My grandmother taught me this. She was dying of emphysema. She says to me, son, you look sad. We're sitting there together. And I turned to her and said, you're dying. And she'd had a huge impact on my life. At that point in time, grandmother turns to me and says, son, I'll never leave this planet. As a proud Aboriginal woman, I've taught you as much knowledge as I possibly can, and you'll share that to the world. And as long as you do that and someone carries my knowledge, my spirit will forever walk this planet. So that was, to me, it's something that made me have a huge realization as well at that point in time. And I just took that and ran with it and haven't stopped. Share as much of my knowledge with as many people as I possibly can, in as many spaces as I possibly can. And you get paid to do what you love doing. I think it's a great little model to show the world that it's possible. And if I can do it, especially what I've been through, then many other people could follow their goals, dreams, and aspirations. And how can you become diverse, as a travel guide? If you're only doing travel tours, what about tours where you could set up, showing people on a site as an example? Yeah, and this is just off the top of my head. A whole bunch of tours, video tours that you're already in the location, you filmed it to say, hey, I'm at this location, have a look at this, you could check out this, and people pay a subscription to see, your tours as an example, and then get ambassador roles out of that with hotels, airlines, and so forth. And you see people that have become very creative and very smart around that space. And that's something, you're getting paid for doing what you love doing. So whatever you're doing out there, think about how you can become very diverse around that from the get-go and start to build things where you tie in and link in everything to the one thing that you love doing.
It's interesting. And I think it leads into the next question a little bit, and the way you're talking about change, because change is difficult for humans, isn't it? We're not great at it.
Huge.
Despite the fact that it's pretty much the only constant, isn't it? Ironically, is that things will change. So what do you say to people who are resisting that change, who are saying, "Oh, it's impossible. I can't do it. I can't change my life for the better." What's your counter argument, I guess? Yeah,
I think there's a lot to that, and the first one be aggressive patience, or just patience. And what I mean by that, it sounds very conflicting. Don't fight when you're doing that. Whatever you do, that's not fighting somebody. It is more just being committed to a journey relentlessly and knowing that life's a marathon. But what we want, as I said, is a drive-through society. I want it yesterday, and I want it with the whole lot. Fries, give me the nuggets, the whole lot. So I think once we understand that it's a journey and it's a marathon, how can we start to train ourselves up to get to the end of that marathon? Which means you're going to have to put in some groundwork, be directional about it. You don't go out and run in your suit shoes, as an example, for a marathon. So you're preparing and you're making sure that you're prepared for this marathon with the right tools to equip you to go down that path where you are, as I said, aggressively, which means you're constantly in the face of the goals, dreams, aspirations that you do have. And that's written out in front of yourself, because you don't have any direction. And it blows me away how many people do this. I see with people in high level positions, and they're sitting there without any sort of direction around how they're operating, what they want out of life. When I did a leadership group as an example of 30 recently, and those leadership group, not one of those have been on an actual overseas holiday in 5 years because they were building the company. Now, I understand building the company, but you're going to burn yourself out and end up hating your position and role of life. And the same principle around this, where people, it's Jan first rolls around, that's it, I'm getting fit, I'm losing weight. Funnily enough, Joe Wicks, the body coach over there, I don't know if you know Joey, who I ended up becoming good friends.
Not personally.
Yeah. So I ended up becoming good friends with Joe, and we talk quite often. And caught up with him on his tour actually in Singapore by chance. We were over there recently, and then when we come back to Oz, caught up with him there as well. But in general, the patience behind that. He showed up to a session, no one was there. He took out all his equipment. I've been that person, and it's easy to say, I'm going to give up on this journey, but same thing with your health and fitness journey. You've got to understand habits and rituals take a period of time. If you understand how the human brain works and the neurological pathways for anything to happen, so you're basically having these messages carried across to one another. It's like a picture of a bridge being built. And the more you do that, the bridge gets closer until the bridge is over. And now you're starting to, this has become a habit. Once you're doing something that you love, remember, because if you get into the fitness industry as an example, and you just want to do it for your health and well-being, but you go into a CrossFit center, nothing, each to their own around what path in the fitness industry you change. But it's like, let's go at it as a CrossFitter, and people will turn off and say, oh, I don't like fitness, it's too hard. Because now you got a perception of the intensity of CrossFit, which it is. It's the greatest fitness community in the world, but it's so intense. Like, you go in there and you go balls to the wall, excuse the term, going at it, right? And you've got to find what works for yourself. Be patient, be aggressive, or be relentless, probably a better word to use, especially with my background. Be just relentless in thinking, I'm going to get what I'm coming to get. And every time that I think that I fall over, so you start the fitness journey on Jan 1st, you fall over by Jan 7th, that's the old you. When you put a roadblock in that and say, hey, pause for a moment, what is the lesson that I learned from today's experience? And it might be about balance. Look, I ate a piece of chocolate cake, but is it really the end of the world? What we focus on is what? The one thing that you did wrong. And you could have a week where you go, well, and I used to have clients and they come in and say, oh, I've messed up my week. And I say, tell me your definition of messing up your week. Oh, I had a piece of chocolate cake yesterday. So they made say they ate 5 meals a day, 7 days, 35 efforts. One effort is what they focused on rather than the 34 good ones. And there was a little, I don't know if you've ever seen the old Albert Einstein maths table. He's in front of these school kids, 9 times 9, 79. And they were laughing, going, you're supposed to be the smartest man in the world and you got 9 times 9 wrong. And he said, I did that to teach you a lesson. You could do everything right, but the one time you do it wrong, everyone's going to make sure they remind you. And it's, if people understand that concept, people aren't cheering you on the sideline when you're doing the work in the background to do what you need. Like we created the app. We've just released these journals, and the context and depth in that, no one was cheering me on. And I was sitting there by myself, unpacking my brain, firing into the old emotions of myself. And you got to understand that the journey, though, is fulfillment in what you're doing around what you love doing. And if you don't do something you're passionate or love doing, you'll do it for a period of time, but once it starts to fall over, you'll lose that interest. And as I said, going back to that aggressive patience, I'm able to just continuously move forward to the direction of my passion, and it won't stop until my last breath. So find what you love doing, be patient with it, and learn everything that you think of as a mistake or failure. Remember, to me, I remove those words. What's the lesson that you got from it so that you can grow from it and prosper from it? And use that same 3 principle every time you sort of go into that little scenario for yourself.
I really like that. And it makes me think as well about kind of the business owner, the entrepreneur journey as well, particularly people who are doing it by themselves. And you talk about the drive-through culture. And I think that's another example, isn't it? There's this expectation that people have when they start out as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And it's because of social media, isn't it? And all the old Instagram influencers, look at me, I made $1 million overnight. And so everyone expects that. Right. So I think we need to talk a bit more about leadership now. It's been such a great conversation. I've totally lost track of where we're going and what the time is. So first question then about leadership specifically. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned about leading people in your career so far?
I'll keep this answer really short because that is probably the best, not the best answer, but the best way of putting it. And it's the ability to continuously move forward no matter how hard you get hit. And as I said, I'm getting smashed left, right, and center in that life. But my intentions were always moving towards the type of life I want. And as I said, the ability to continuously get hit and move forward is a mentality to create a better reality for any human on this planet. Because you go out into the world and think there's no roadblocks, obstacles, and so forth. Your dream and what's coming for you is life, and life's going to beat you up as hard as it possibly can. And if you're not equipped, and that's why I say to people, learn how to deal with your emotions, immerse yourself in that struggle, and then, be leaders. As I said, imagine leading at war and you're getting hit constantly and not being able to adapt and continuously move forward and into where you want to. And same thing on the sporting field. You run down the field with the soccer ball or some sort of sport, someone's going to try and stop you on the opposite side of the team or the individual. And you're not always going to win, not even the best Michael Jordan, any of the Roger Federer. They lost points, they lost sets, they lost games, but they continuously kept improving what they were great at and until they were at a level where they'll never be forgotten. That would be something I'd say to everyone. Just put the time, energy, and effort into the habits and rituals that leaders have and be prepared for the struggle that's coming and watch what happens on the other side of it. We'll move forward continuously.
Yeah, persevere. That's the emerging theme, I think.
Absolutely, man. Huge. Especially in my life.
I'm curious, what has been your own best experience of being led?
I've never been asked that question. So, and this is an example of what we spoke about when you're passionate about something. But to say what would be the best experience about being led, I think probably there's been a few, to be honest, because I look and I think about them. There's a bloke I played rugby union when I was a kid with, and he used to just work hard, relentlessly. And I don't know if he ever played representative football. He's a New Zealand guy, and he's just his work ethic, his attitude. He didn't say much, but it just, around his ethics of how he built himself, very high standard and very humble. Versus then having somebody that from our family had never done anything before, and my uncle was they came from a really dark time, and he went out and became he's a professor at a university here in Newcastle in Australia, and so same thing, never said anything to me, but just knowing that what I went through, and I know they went through darker times than I had. How did he do that? Like, I was like, oh, well, if he could do that, well, then what's your excuse? What are you really going to say to yourself? And I think, those couple of, they're more personal, very directional, versus those that, then I had people that were just great mentors. When I came home, I was in the fitness industry. There's a bloke here, who I crossed paths with, became good friends with, and good friends with at the moment, for many years now. He had a huge influence on me on how he led, and he was very stern. He was very, I know what we're doing. Here's what we're doing, X, Y, and Z, and then still be able to adapt as we went along and say, Mary's got a great suggestion, and I think that could really elevate this whole environment, getting the most out of it. And so his adaptability, as well as his direct, hey, I know what I'm doing, X, Y, and Z, let's execute, and then go out and do that. And but with the flexibility to make sure that we listen. And my grandmother taught me this as well: listen and learn from others, because they see things, as you said before, the perspective is different. If we don't take that perspective, plug it into a space, we're going to get into a position where we close ourselves off from other opportunities, and that shuts us down. So be all ears and be willing to work together to create a very solid, strong solution.
This might be quite a difficult question, actually. We'll see.
Yeah.
If you were to start your journey over again, would you do anything differently?
Oh, wow. It's very hard. I went to play professional rugby league here in Australia. So I went so close to actually making that dream happen. And yeah, I do think, I wonder what would have happened and how it would have been built, because I'd had a bit of experience by that stage when I signed the contract. I've been locked up as a kid. I was on the cusp, and I just think, maybe you had enough lessons then. But I think the fact that I went through and endured so much being in custody, I wouldn't be who I am today. I'd go back and not hurt as many people. Find the money some other way in the clouds or something. Yeah, but in general, mate, now that I know what I know, probably I'd say, yeah, I would change it, because I'd be so determined to put that effort. My sister became a famous jockey here in Australia, and that was because our father was so disciplined, got us to be structured. So even though I'd spent 12 years with him, and he was physically abused, that was his discipline, way of discipline. But in general, it created a lifetime of discipline for myself. So I think, I probably could have finished up early and got the same result. But yeah, I don't know. No, I wish I'd stopped before the 7 years. Then I would have been built really strong. And I think that would have gave me 7 more years of magic to share to the world. And we've changed and saved lives, and people have messaged us, random people, because of you, mate. I was going to do something bad to myself, and we stepped into a space. That's, leadership at its highest form is saving a life, and then, into spaces around businesses and building businesses with people, getting the most out of people. It's been a great journey, and I think if I hadn't been that, some people might not have aligned as much as they would with other people. So it's a very, as you said, a hard question, and I have had that before, and to this day I still think the same sometimes. I think, but would I be who I am as well? And if I can't be that person, I've helped this many people, then the answer is no.
It is intentionally a difficult question, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think, it's very easy to say, isn't it? No, I wouldn't change anything, particularly for the majority of people. But I think your answer is very interesting.
I want to clarify that for your listeners too. I don't say no because I was proud of robbing banks or something of that nature, but I don't think I would have become who I am as a leader if I hadn't experienced that. And I just want to clarify that, so people don't go, he loved committing crimes. I look back on it and as something I didn't, that's something I would change for sure. If I could have learned to make money so that I could be in a space where I could help people change and save their lives, that money was able to have that impact, then, same thing. I feel that I'll be in a different space. Just like maybe Joe has been, by being his authentic self without committing any crimes. And I think people are starting to see the authenticity around who I've become, and we've had huge traction on our online program, our business, and we can do that anywhere in the world. You could log in from London and do the workshops, and that's something that's powerful to us. It's something that, that's important to me, to give back to myself, so I feel better before I leave this planet. Yeah,
I think your authenticity, it's been shining through this whole conversation. So,
awesome.
Can only applaud that. And
thanks.
No, I don't think, I certainly didn't. I'm sure the listeners didn't think that you were saying you enjoyed robbing banks. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is that even hearing you answer the question, you're on the fence about certain times in your life, and it was quite an interesting reflection in the way you walked us through that. And I guess what I'm saying is, for the majority of people, it's really easy to say no, because I wouldn't be who I am today. But most people haven't been through such difficult experiences. And I think actually most people, if they're honest, would say, I'd start making money earlier, or
absolutely.
I would have had that embarrassing conversation, or, X, Y, and Z. So
I think even context of what you said before, and to be authentic and be real about the journey, when I was in that life, it was a wild ride, a thrill of, the money being made, the adrenaline from it was unbelievable. But would I promote it and say, go out and do that as a living? I'd say no to people. So just, because people might say, oh, bullshit, he would have loved it. And at the time when you built like that, of course you do. And when you pull something off, you're like, how good's it? How good's life? High five one another. But the reality is, as I said, the authenticity behind. When you realize at some point in time and you mature and you see a different way to life, and the funniest thing is, you make whatever 10 times, 100 times more that for the passion that you have in the industry you've stepped into, without having to police kick my door in. Like, that's where that crossover of, you know what, maybe I could have changed my life early and gone in a different direction because my father had instilled a discipline. If I put it into business at that point in time, I would have just excelled at what I did back then as well. And that might have saved me 7 years, 12 years with both bank robberies, as an example, or maybe many more from the 18 that I ended up over 18 that I served. So, we'll make the most of what we've got left and keep leading from the front.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's quite an extreme demonstration, isn't it, of the difference between taking that short-term gratification view versus the long-term, actually what's best for me in the long run. Short-term
gain for long-term pain.
Exactly.
So, and I always say, long-term pain for short-term pain for long-term gain. And what that means is, in general, short-term gain, long-term pain. Yes. So the opposite of with the bank robberies, you think it's great, but then the consequences of, and when you break it down to the amount of money you made and the years you served, zero money that you're making in custody, how much do you really make? And like if I say this when I go back to juvenile justice centres or jails and speak and run programs, and I see people's blank faces because we never sat there and thought about it in that regard. And the same thing, look, short-term pain, but long-term gain in this business thing. And the short-term pain is setting up what I've set up, the lifestyle program. It's been painful. The admin side, unpacking the brain, dealing with past traumas. And when I say past traumas, not just for me, when you realize what you've done to people, you're like, oh man, if I could, and obviously in this world, it's a hard thing to do. I'd love to be able to, sit with my victims and say, how can I help you? But the reality is, their perception of me is this bad guy that might do something to them in this space where it's the total opposite. But like, once you get to that level of understanding, you understand that your A to B didn't include these people. It was just unfortunate detour in life, and what lessons can I learn to be better at the opposite, next opportunity, and that's something that's important to myself moving forward.
Yeah.
Leadership Heroes.
If you could pick one person, it can be someone alive or dead, past, present, someone from history, someone real, someone from fiction, entirely up to you. And that person would perfectly embody leadership. Who would you pick and why?
Oh, it's such a hard one, but I'd have to say, like, when I changed my life, Jim Rohn was huge to me. And, the way he conducted himself, I don't know his background too well. I've got to read more on who he was and everything. So I don't know if he came from, he could have been abusive to females. I don't know. I'm not suggesting he was, but to me, he epitomized leadership. The way he spoke, the way he engaged audiences, the way he broke it down, it made you understand it, and he put it in a way that would plug into your brain. And for me, as I transitioned out of jail, the internet came out, and it came out before the 70s, but it really started to blow up. It was, by the time I came out in 2010, and Jim Rohn I watched his videos every single day, and they wired me to just see things differently, how he treated people, laughing at, always enjoying life, like whilst he did what he did as, just sharing his love for knowledge. And I think that to me sits as a great leader, because he was calm, his delivery was precise, he had fun with it. The way he broke it down, he gave people the almost stepping stones to the next level. He tied things in really well. It really shaped how I speak, as an example, I believe. And then obviously other speakers get involved, but he had a huge influence, and I think he's just his nature, his body language, the way he conducted himself was a great sign of a leader.
Yeah, great pick. I think someone's picked him before, but I won't hold
it. Probably the only, and it's something that I'd add when I think about it now, and I look at it, some people neglect, so he probably wasn't the fittest looking guy. But once again, he might have kept himself fit by running, and back then, especially during those times, 80s and so forth, running was huge, and aerobics and stuff like that. So he might have kept fit in that regard. But when you try and think about a holistic approach where someone said to me the other day, "Hey mate, I bought these headphones," and he said, "Can I tell you something?" I was like, "Yeah, go ahead, mate." He goes, "You're really well balanced." And it was the fact that I'd spoken about headphones and understanding the headphones. I think he was looking at my body, how I was dressed, the build of myself, how I spoke. And I think that was a mold of all these different leaders that I'd immersed myself in. Social media gives you that chance. YouTube gives you that chance. Audible, Blinkist, you've got so much professors at your fingertips in a heartbeat that we used to have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to even get into the course. Now they're just sharing how the brain functions, gut health. We live in an age where you can grasp anything and everything. And I think, overall, he was probably the greatest one I could think of. But when I think of a body of strength, it probably wasn't Jim Rohn's.
Yeah, no, I was going to say though. I mean, you're right, and you've already said it for me. But it shows the power of the internet, doesn't it? I mean, the internet,
absolutely.
It's kind of good or evil, isn't it? Depending on how you look at it. And it does get a bit of a, particularly with social media, it gets a bit of a bad rep, doesn't it? But absolutely. The power of just access to the sum of all human knowledge, effectively, isn't it? And you can get it on your phone now, in your hand.
Right. You type in brain neuroscience and watch how many professors pop up, and you find it's like anything. And as I said before, find somebody that you align with. I listen to Huberman as an example, and the way he explains that, I can understand that. Whereas the next person might be very, on a scientific type level, and I disconnect versus the next person being really modern age and being able to present that to an audience that understands it. And same thing, like if I talk cell biology with someone around the benefits of leadership, they get lost. If I tell them how we can feel better or function better, their ears will prick up. So it's about making sure, and that Jim Rohn in that sense taught me that, make sure the benefit and value to that conversation is on the end of your tongue. And I think that's something that I'll pass on to the world. And for those that have gotten that through this podcast, by all means, reach out anytime. We love what we're doing. We're just grateful to be able to share that knowledge and give back to the world, man. I took a lot away, and I'd love to sort of give back as much as I can before I leave this planet.
Awesome. Well, it's been genuinely inspirational talking with you today. So the last thing I always let everyone do, or offer the opportunity, is if the listeners want to learn more about you, what you do, perhaps join one of your programs, can you point to a website or your podcast or a book or all of the above?
Champion. For us, it's jeffreymorgan.com.au, JEFFREY. All my social media is THE Jeffrey Morgan, JEFFREY. And I don't know if I said that the same way. jeffreymorgan.com.au, JEFFREY. I'm pretty sure I did, but in general, reach out in those spaces. We are, I've just built the podcast room at home. I'll start dropping those. I do want to build my YouTube this year, and just to leave behind as much knowledge and power and leadership and mental health and high performance habits and rituals, and how you can get the most out of your mindset to people to live a healthier, happier, calmer, and more successful life. So head across to the website, head across to those socials, hit follow, or reach out and get in contact, and be more than happy to help you out. And we do travel to all parts of the world for our workshops or the online program you can do from anywhere in the world. If you want us in person, we're happy to travel to any country across this planet. So by all means, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll send you the information package and we can go from there.
Great. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. It's been a long episode, which is great because it means we were loving it. So thanks again and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, champion. Thanks for your time, energy and effort. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thanks again, Jeff, so much for your time today. That was a long episode, and you did take quite a bit of time out of your evening away from your family to talk to us there. So it is much appreciated. It was genuinely an inspirational conversation, and so many great nuggets there for anyone who's looking to turn their life around, to change where they're stuck, to change their career even, and just get over some of those obstacles that hold us all back. Listeners, if you would like to learn more about Jeff, if you'd like to sign up to one of his online workshops, or maybe even book him for an in-person visit, reach out. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. And that's all from me today. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found it useful and interesting and insightful. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. In the meantime, remember, as always, be a leader, not a boss.